Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I'd like to first thank ISNA for giving me this opportunity to be here and share this in this forum. It's such a great idea to bring educators from across the country together to learn from each other and experience from the experiences that we're having throughout the schools and the systems that we have. And I'd like to also thank you for participating in this kind of workshop, because it's going to be, inshallah, a part lecture, but I'd like you to be involved, inshallah, a lot with the activities that I have. And we're going to, inshallah, have a snowball fight here in LA, which is kind of confusing because I'm from Michigan originally. But anyways, so we love having snowball fights. So really quickly, I'm going to just go over what are some of the things that I'll be discussing today with you, inshallah, and then moving on. So first of all, what are some of the factors that cause kids to be, or even teachers sometimes, to be unmotivated or demotivated in the classroom? And one of the things I was saying to those who were here in the previous session, I was telling the sister that it goes perfectly with her presentation, because her presentation was talking about school-wide activities. Inshallah, I'm going to try to share with you guys as many practical, steps or things that you can use in the classroom, within the classroom. So, what motivates us? We're going to have a snowball fight, like I mentioned. You'll see what that means. The ARCS, or the ARCs and the flow theories. Practical tips to keep students engaged in the classroom. So a little bit about myself. I taught for over 12 years in Islamic schools. And I was a tarbiyah coordinator, a youth coordinator for the masajid, a connected masjid with the school, and various functions. Alhamdulillah, for the past about 4 or 5 years, I've been giving khutbah as well, offering weekend workshops and different things like that in different communities as well. So inshallah, hopefully I'll share some of my experience with you guys today. So, alhamdulillah,
What are you teaching?
I'm sorry, I teach Islamic studies in Quran. One of the things as Muslims, alhamdulillah, we're already motivated. We see that the Quran, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started the revelation, wahi, with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم. And in just the first 5 verses, in the first revelation, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept repeating the importance, you could say, of knowledge, right? About 7 times in just these verses. And so we have that motivation, but a lot of times the students that we're working with are not motivated as we are, okay? And they don't seem to see eye to eye with a lot of the things that we're trying to teach. So this is a funny picture. I love Office Space. I don't know if you guys watched that before. This is an old movie. But anyways, it's about guys who are really not motivated to work anymore. But so over here, the study, 40% of high school students are disengaged from school. And I want you to kind of conceptualize that and think, if there's 30 people or 30 kids in a classroom, you have about 13 kids, okay, about 12 kids who are demotivated. They're not really paying attention, okay? And then you have, like, for example, things that I've seen, and they really hurt us as educators, where, like, for example, a sister will go into her car with her mom or dad, whoever, and she'll take off the scarf like it was like some type of handcuffs, right? And she'll throw it on the floor. I've seen that personally happen, right? Or we'll see, for example, like kids on the way to school, and the brother had mentioned this about being like consumed with like mobile phones and technology and all these things. So interestingly enough, so I was teaching in Michigan for a few years, last 3 years. And I would take the bus to school, which was interesting. But anyway, so the students, the Muslim students who were sitting there on the bus with me, they would literally have their iPads out, and it would be about an hour, hour and a half to the school. And they would be watching movies, they would be listening to music, they would have all sorts of different things, to kind of take them or amuse them on the way to school. And then on the way back, the same thing, right? So I did this a survey, you could say, in my high school class. So I was teaching, for most of the 11 years, I've been teaching high school students, some middle school as well. But anyway, so I did the survey with the high school students, and I asked them around how many hours do you, watch or play video games or movies, and basically media consumption. And they were saying about average to 6 to 8. One kid, he told me about 12 hours, and I couldn't believe it. And then he broke it down to me. He said basically on the way to school and the way back, so about 2 hours, 3 hours over there. And then he said, right when I get home, I'm playing video games. And then all night, or pretty much all day, he's doing that until night, and he'll go to sleep at 1, 2 a.m. And no wonder why they're sleeping in class, right? So one of the first things, or the factors that I think that why students are demotivated, you could say, is because of the society or the things that are available to them. And those are some things that we need to keep in mind, because, like for example, some private schools, they actually tell people, or the students, the parents, they control the media consumption that they have. Like for example, an hour a week, okay, for some Jewish schools. And some Catholic schools might have a couple hours or no TV at all. And they have to write like a waiver or like a consent form before they actually get enrolled in the program. So that's one thing. I think so. This is something really important about the students themselves, because it causes a lot of demotivation in the classroom with sleeping and so forth. Okay. Let me go to the next slide. So the second thing I have over here that I thought was kind of demotivating is sometimes the curriculum. You can't really see that. I'm sorry about that, but it's the kids are all sleeping in class. Okay, so but one of the things that I've seen at least throughout the years is sometimes we try to overachieve, and so we're trying to teach like the fiqh of inheritance, transactions, which are usually college level subjects in an Islamic studies program, and we're trying to teach it to like 9th and 10th graders, right? And so they're bored out of their mind. These kids sometimes are questioning whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. And we're trying to teach them the fiqh of, this and that. Now, the thing, what I think, at least the approach that we should take is starting from scratch. The kids who are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, I think we need to start from, just the basics. Like, for example, that they have a Muslim identity, okay, that they know they're Muslim and they love to be Muslim. Basic adab. Okay, basic khuluq, like character building activities and so on. And then inshallah, once they're motivated to kind of, you open the cap a little bit, now you can start pouring the knowledge or the water in, right? If it's locked, nothing's going to go in. It's just going to splash from the outside. And I feel that, unfortunately, that's happening in a lot of schools nowadays, at least some of the ones that I've been a part of, where we're giving all this information to them. They're memorizing it, and they're doing well maybe on the exams, but we can't really see the results in their practice of Islam. And I think, at least for me, why I come from an IT background, and one of the reasons why I joined Islamic schools and started teaching and everything was because I wanted, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me the tawfiq and understanding, inshallah, but to try to make a difference in the kids' lives. Because we see, like I grew up in the US, I grew up in Michigan, went to public school, Islamic school, then back to high school, and then college, and so on. So many difficulties, and the sister had touched upon it previously, about so many difficulties and the peer pressure and everything that we face. So this is something that I think we should start from the basics, and then inshallah, once they're motivated enough, then they could be given more ilm. So that's, I think, the second thing, that sometimes too much curriculum or too much information, or sometimes maybe not enough, and we're not challenging them enough either. The third thing, I think sometimes, are the teachers themselves. Right? So sometimes I think we come from like different perspectives. Like for example, you have the Eastern perspective of memorization, okay? And the student has to sit at the desk, and he has to pretty much sit there the entire time memorizing or writing, or they're glued to the desk. And I have the picture of this kid who's handcuffed, poor kid who's handcuffed to the desk. Right? And one of the educators, they mentioned something funny. They said, I asked my child, what's the difference between kindergarten and first grade? And he said that, well, kindergarten was fun, but first grade makes my butt hurt. Okay? So, because they sit there all day long. So this is something that the different styles of instruction. I think that we need to keep that in mind as educators. Inshallah, I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of different tips. But so the Western style of instruction, obviously, or of course, a lot of times those who've went through it is more about understanding the material. It's not really about memorization. And because of that, the kids sometimes who are coming from public school and they have all these activities and all these fun things, and then they'll come to Islamic school where they're stuck kind of to the desk. So it causes them to be demotivated as well. The lessons that involve reading from a book or, just kind of sitting at the desk, that's, I think, something that we need to really move away from. Also, I think, kind of going back to the previous thing about curriculum, I think it's a discussion that we need to have within our Muslim communities with all the stakeholders of the community, not just the students, not just the administration or the faculty members, but I think we need to get together with like the imams, the students of knowledge, the parents, everyone, involve everyone in the forum, okay, and really discuss, have a meeting and try to discuss what are they really trying to get from the curriculum. Right? What do they really? What are the main priorities or things that we could focus on? And inshallah, if you ask them, hopefully they can share some beneficial things, and will be more, you could say, apt to entertaining or giving in to sometimes what the community wants rather than what we want to kind of influence our children by. So interestingly enough, I was looking up some motivational things about, it wasn't just for teachers actually, it was just generally speaking. So how many of you guys have heard of Daniel Pink? Nobody. Okay, so, one. So he has some really interesting, well, he took the research from Carnegie Mellon, University of Chicago, I think MIT was involved with this research, and what they did is they were starting to question just the basic premise, like a lot of the business models. They'll say, like, for example, if you pay the student or the employee more money, they'll be more motivated to work. And so actually they did this across continents, and they found that paying people more actually doesn't make them work harder. Okay, it actually lessens the amount of effectiveness a person has. The only thing is, though, there's a catch. You have to take money off the table, meaning money shouldn't be an issue, and unfortunately a lot of times in Islamic schools it is a big issue, right? If the teachers or everyone is struggling to pay the bills, okay, and they're always worried about, am I going to get my next paycheck on time? Because I've heard of those horror stories as well, right? Maybe 2-3 months, we don't have the money right now, we'll get it after fundraising, things like that. So if you take those things out of the equation and you get dedicated people who are paid well, they don't have to think about money, you'll get them to produce a lot more or a lot at a higher level. And so this is something I think really important. So only motivated teachers can produce motivated students, right? So if we're demotivated ourselves, we're always complaining in the classroom or in our teacher's lounge and other places, it's going to have an effect on the students. So that's something to keep in mind. So 3 things basically he proposed. I'll just go, this is kind of like a, it's a side discussion, inshallah, to be had at a different time. I just wanted to go over it so you have an idea of what motivates teachers, for the administrators at least here. So first of all, autonomy. Okay? So they need to have a self-directed kind of approach, and you give them a little bit of time. So one of the things that we did at our school is we had a tarbiyah period once a week. Okay? So we would have, for example, 3 Islamic studies classes. Excuse me. And then we would have 1 tarbiyah session, and the teacher was pretty much told, do whatever you want. I mean, kind of in the realm of Islamic studies, but do whatever you want. And so we were given that autonomy, and that was the most successful period in the whole week. The kids really look forward to it. And I'm going to share, inshallah, like examples that I have with you in a few minutes. But mastery, so getting better at stuff. So you have the teachers getting training, different things, so that they can get better at their level of teaching, and allow them to take coursework and different things in the community, workshops, so that they can better themselves. And then purpose, so making a contribution to society, right? So many of us, some of you may be even board members, right, who are volunteering 20, 30 hours a week after work to, help the Islamic school or help the masjid and so on. And so this is something really that if you motivate people, inshallah, they'll be able to do a lot of things for you for even free, right? And so with even students, they'll if they want to make a contribution to society, inshallah, they will be able to do that. Okay. Now the snowball fight. And so you're thinking of, you're going to need a piece of paper, okay? And I'd like you to tear out a piece of paper, please. And what you're going to write down on the piece of paper, what are some problems you have in the classroom? Okay? How about we limit it to one problem that you have in the classroom? Okay? So this activity will take about 5 minutes. So what is a problem that occurs in the classroom? Now there's many uses. The things I'm going to be using with you, inshallah, you can actually use it in the classroom yourselves. Like for example, if this activity, it keeps things anonymous, you'll see. Okay, it keeps things real, and you get feedback right away. Okay, so go ahead, write one problem. Let's keep away from the plural sense. So I'm sure we have lots of problems in the classroom, but one problem that you have in the classroom. And if you could write that down in the piece of paper, and I'd like you to crumple up the piece of paper. If you don't have a piece of paper, if your neighbor could let you borrow one or a pen, inshallah, then we could work with each other in that. So I promise you, inshallah, you'll have at least 20 things you can take home, basically to your classroom, that you can implement right away, inshallah. Okay, crumple it actually, not like that. So make it messy, yes. Okay, make a snowball out of it. Okay, you have it? Now I'd like you to throw it at each other. Okay? Just throw it at one another really quickly. Just throw it at each other. Okay. So when I do this in the classroom with kids, they're a lot more mean. Okay, but anyways, they'll get up and they'll actually start. Okay, if you could pick up a piece of paper, just whatever it is. Yeah, anyone that you find around or it was thrown at you. The sister who was really mad at you from the previous session, and she threw it at you. You could get her back now. Okay. But anyways, you open up the piece of paper, please. Okay. So we're going to have only. We don't really have time to go through all of these, obviously. But what I'd like to do, inshallah, is just go through a few of them, and what we're going to do is read them, and you're going to give me the solution. Okay? So this is one of the best ways to get peer feedback, right? You get students to give feedback right away to one another, because a lot of times they don't want to hear it from the sheikh or the teacher or an adult. They want to hear it from themselves. So this way you'll keep it anonymous. You'll get feedback from each other or from the students, and they'll be able to inshallah do this. But let's go ahead, sister in the front. I think you wanted to read yours.
I thought, when you say you are going to give the answer now, I don't know.
Oh, you just read it and then we'll share the answers, inshallah.
One of the problems is the students are not engaged in the classroom, and the sister wrote the other one is not paying attention. They're not engaged with the class, and they're not paying attention.
Okay, so excellent. So generally speaking, like not paying attention, okay, or not being engaged in the classroom, that's really what the whole presentation, inshallah, will be about. But what are some solutions that you have from your classroom what you use? I'll start off, okay, if you don't mind. One of the things I do is if I see a student with their head down in the classroom, I have a water bottle with a little spray on it, okay? So I'll take it out, I'll literally go up to the student, and I'll spray them in the face, okay? So it's a fun way to kind of just keep things interesting, right? And it wakes them up right away, okay? So, I mean,
What if they don't like it?
so,
What if they get offended?
no, I do it in a joking way, and I warn them beforehand. I give them a few warnings before I do it in the classroom.
Can we know what age group that is?
That was middle and high. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest doing it a kindergartner. That would probably tar them for life or scar them for life. But okay, what are some other things? Though? What are some things that you use? Yes.
Sometimes when they are like this, I will tell them just to stand up. We stand up, all of us. We do some like jumping
Exercise.
in the class.
I'm a fan of Al-Maghrib, and I don't know if you've ever taken an Al-Maghrib class. The Sheikh will tell them to stand up and then massage each other's backs and things like that, right? To get people kind of up, right? One of the things that we could do, have them do some, if it's possible, have them do some type of exercise. Have them do a push-up, right, in the class. And kind of wake them up a little bit, right? What are some other things that you can do? Yes, sister.
So I haven't used this in my class yet, but one thing I did try with some kids at a camp was that it's called Big Now. It's outdoors. So you choose a start line and an end line, and you basically run from there, from one end to the other, screaming at the top of your lungs, and once you're out of breath, you stop where you are. And
Okay.
it's a game to wake you up, take out all that energy, and you focus.
And make the really loud kids lose their voice so they can't bother you again. Okay, good. Okay, let's move on to the next one if you don't mind. The second paper, someone, if they could open it up. Yes, sister, what does it say?
Lack of discipline.
Okay, lack of discipline in the classroom. Okay, so what are some solutions that we could have for that?
Give them responsibility.
Give them some type of responsibility, especially with younger kids. They love, can you, give them a bunch of unsharpened pencils, really simple as that, and go sharpen them. Things like that, they feel really proud of it, and they'd like to do a part, something like that. What else? For discipline, yes, sister.
Classroom rules, have the students involved in setting the classroom rules and have them sign a contract.
There's a great book by Harry Wong. I can't remember the name right now. First Days of Class, I think. First Days of School. Sorry, and it's a great book on in the first days of school. Really to build this culture of rules and procedures, really to set the stage for the rest of the year, inshallah. So doing that early on, a lot of times we'll start teaching right away. We want to give them the ilm, but they're not ready for it. So trying to, help them a little bit at least, and then inshallah moving on to that. Sister, I think you had
Who was the author?
Harry Wong. He has a video series on it too. It was really great. We actually bought it for the school, and we had a seminar for teachers on a Saturday, and we went through the series. Yes, sister.
The new one is called Classroom Management, and it has a CD.
Okay.
The old one, First Days of School, I think you could pick up really cheap as used.
Yeah, I go to Goodwill, and I just buy books from there. So it's like $1, and it's pretty cheap. Okay, last thing for discipline. And, yes.
The good behavior.
Good. Okay, so good behavior, reward them. And I'm going to be talking about some techniques, inshallah, even for that, about character, and I call it tarbiyah tickets. Inshallah, I'll share that with you. Do you want to do one more really quick, if we have time? Okay, let's do one more. So, one more snowball, if you can open it up. Anyone with another snowball, something that hasn't been said before? Yes, sister? Time management. Okay, did they elaborate a little bit, or... No. Okay. So how can we, for example, if we have a classroom session of 45 minutes, okay, and we have to go through a certain curriculum, in that amount of time, and we have, Muhammad, I shouldn't use the name Muhammad, but a certain troublemaker kid, right, who's always bothering us and delaying our lessons and things like that. What are we going to do, or how can we manage our time a little bit better in the classroom? So what are some suggestions for that? I have a bunch of ideas, but what are some suggestions we could do for time management?
First of all, you have to divide the whole period between the time span of 15 as according to your needs, and
Okay.
then set the routine of your classroom, what you have to do. So that's how you can track the time. And it's just and the moment that activity change, the moment the discussion change, the students also.
Excellent. Okay, so it's a lot of grunt work, right? But if you spend enough time making the right lesson plan, and really thinking about, almost sometimes, step by minute, not maybe minute by minute, but 5, 10, 15 minutes at a time, inshallah, that classroom session will go so much smoother and so much better, right? One of the things that I did is, I call it a break manager. And so the kids who are kind of causing some type of discipline issues in class, or kind of delaying me or something like that, or kids who are even really literally bored in the class, what I'll do is I'll have a break manager kind of in the beginning of the class, and they just stand up, okay? And that's a sign to me that some kids are they're bored, okay? Or the session's going too slow or something like that. So I'll crack a joke. I actually have an app that has, I don't remember the name right now, but it has like about 500 jokes or something like that, right? And so I'll look up a couple of good jokes that are, suitable for the classroom, and then tell it to the kids, and that really like wakes everyone up, okay? And usually managing time, again, it's, I think, a lot to do with the lesson planning. If you do that, spend even 20 minutes before class trying to envision how the class or the lesson will look like. I would even write the objectives on the board and things, and I'll get to that theory next, actually, right here. The flow theory. So I don't want to even try to pronounce her name, but she was a Hungarian professor by the name of Mihaly, and she has a very long last name. I'll share it with you later, inshallah, if you need it. But basically, what she was trying to say is that if a person has, like for example, and some of you guys might have been, accustomed to this, you're doing some type of activity at home or a hobby or something that you really, really love doing, and you're so involved that you don't know, how fast time's, going, right? And so she said that could actually be done in the classroom if you follow these certain methods. So first, like for example, the goals of the session or the objectives of the session of the class are clearly defined. Okay. And secondly, they're attainable. So you're not trying to teach like calculus to a ninth grader or something like that, right? So there's something attainable. They could actually reach those goals within that classroom setting, so that they feel that they're achieving that. Clear and immediate feedback. Okay, so that you could kind of walk through the class and give them pointers and different advices through the class. And then also, it should be something outside the box. I'll give you an example. So, in one of the communities I was at, the students would complain a lot about the khutbah, or you could say the style of the khutbah. Okay, sometimes the topics, sometimes the speakers, some different things like that. So one of the things that I did, I said, as Muslims, unfortunately we complain a lot, but we don't find solutions, right? So I said, okay, I want you guys to come up with the solution. Okay, I want you students, you high school students, to come up with a solution. I held, yes, go ahead, sister. Are you going to tell me a solution, inshallah? Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Okay, sorry. So one of the things I told them, I said, hey, why don't we come up with a survey, okay? Khutbah survey, or khatib survey, you could say. We'll share it with the imam. We'll share it with the board members, so we don't offend anyone in the community. We'll get permission from everyone. We set a certain amount of questions, and we hand it out, after the Jummah khutbah. And we get the feedback, and we put it into charts and so on. And so it was like a technical, technology project, Islamic project. Writing was involved. Everything's involved in, or packaged, you could say, in one. So they were so excited about this, and because they knew, they actually turned it into the board members later and the imam, and shared that feedback, and it helped them. So it tells you that they're actually part of the process, and they were excited about it. Another thing that we could do is the ARCS theory. Now you have the attention, okay? And I'll break this down really quickly. So what are some ways you can gain the attention of students? So one of the things that I do sometimes in the class is I'll show a short clip, okay? Those, what is it called? The Muslim reminder or the daily reminder? Is it the daily reminder? It's the short 1 or 2 minute clips that they have, okay? And they're really great short sessions by shuyukh who are usually, pretty well known to the students, and you show that to them. There's one Australian brother who does a lot of spoken word. I don't remember the brother's name, but he'll have 4 or 5 minute short spoken word poems. So I'll put that on, and then I'll have discussion questions. Basically, they're attention getters. Okay, sometimes I'll have humor, like I mentioned about the break manager thing. So I'll have that, or sometimes I'll pull pranks in the class. Okay, like for example, when I was talking about Ayatul Kursi, I was explaining to them the benefits of Ayatul Kursi, and then we were talking about magic, which all the students love. One of the things I did is I worked with one of the high school students, and what we did is he brought fishing line, okay, and we attached it to some things on a bookshelf, basically some bottles and things like that. And right when I was talking about Ayatul Kursi and I was talking about jinn, all of a sudden he pulls it, and it freaked everyone out, okay? Of course they didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh my God. And then I started reciting Ayatul Kursi, and then everyone's like, oh, what happened? Brother, what's going on? Are the jinn mad at us? And these were high school students. But anyways, so the sisters actually got us back. They made salty brownies. Okay? And they took permission from me first, and I talked to the administration. So I'm not saying go ahead and do everything yourself without really talking to administration. But I okayed it with the administration, and then I kind of like went this way, right? So, you know, one time, I actually did it at the end of the year with one of the, and I'm just saying that like if we're role models with these students, inshallah we'll have such a more lasting benefit with them, inshallah, right? So one of the students, she was a really great student, mashallah. Always getting A's in the class and, you know, really well behaved, everything like that. And I just wanted to pick on her really, but she was a good kid, mashallah. So, and I knew she would take it. So I worked with her dad, I emailed her dad, and I told him, I said, listen, I want to, you know, do a short, like, prank with your daughter, and if it's okay with you, I'll, you know, she was getting an A, and I knocked her grade down to like a B minus, okay? And, you know, I just, you know, took a few grades from here and there, and everything like that, so I put it down to a B minus just for a few hours, you know, to mess with her. And so the dad, when the daughter got home, he goes, I checked your grade, and it's a B minus, and she goes, let me check. And she was all excited, and then she's, oh my God, what's going on? And then she emails me right away, and the dad said, no biryani for you tonight. And literally, it was hilarious. The next morning, she goes, Brother Waseem, what's going on? You know, I was getting an A, and I said, no. And then everyone was involved, like the students. So, like, we got you. And she just, you know, it was really fun. So, you know, doing this type of things, getting their attention, inshallah, will go a long ways with the students. One of the things like PowerPoint, this is Prezi actually, but if you have Prezi, it takes a lot of time, I know that. But if you can have, once in a while, you have Prezi or PowerPoints. One of the things, I was teaching da'wah to my 11th and 12th graders in high school. So I have about 300 slides. It turned into a workshop afterwards and things like that, alhamdulillah. But I have 300 slides, and I was just going over that. And they're really just like what I'm showing you, almost like pictures. And I'm just talking. So it's not like, a lot of times we have a lot of text and people are trying to read what's on the slides. So having just pictures to engage people rather than for them to read from it. So getting attention. Second thing is, and there's a lot of different ways, inshallah. I'll put this on my blog. I'll share the website again, inshallah, afterwards with the detailed notes, so you'll have this. I think they put the PowerPoint up, but you won't see all the notes. So, so the second thing was relevance. Okay, so how can this information, Islamically or Quranic information, relate to people's or the students' lives, right? And so one of the things that I do is I try to link it to current events, celebrities, and maybe something that's going on nowadays, and they're talking about it, and I overhear it. You know, I'll find out a little bit more information, maybe some shows that they're watching, so I kind of catch up, try to see what they're into, and then I'll mention it in the classroom, so they're a lot more engaged. Next thing is confidence. Okay, so I give them a chance to develop their own questions. Like, for example, after a lesson's taught, I'll give them the opportunity to make Jeopardy questions, and I'll tell them, and I promise them, I'll use some of those questions in the exam, okay? And not all, some of the questions in the actual exam. And so this motivates them, this gives them confidence, and it's competitive in nature as well. So they work together, they come up with these questions, then they quiz each other, and then I give them extra credit and different things as well, inshallah, from that. Now, satisfaction, we need to give praise and rewards to our students as well. One of the things that I would do is, I call it tarbiyah tickets, okay? And the tarbiyah ticket basically is a small little ticket. It has different character traits on there. And then what we would do is pass it out to students. This was a class, or school-wide activity actually. And we would pass out tarbiyah tickets to different students in the school who are implementing that sunnah or that character trait. And at the end of the week, I would pick from those traits or from those cards or the tickets, and we would give $5 gift cards, $10 gift cards. I'd give them different types of prizes, and give them an honorable mention, like during the newsletter. If your masjid or the school's connected to a masjid, maybe you could work with the masjid, have them announce the name in front of the community if possible, things like that. So to find or to make them feel, you could say satisfied or praised and feel like that they're a part of something, inshallah. Okay, surveys. So I love surveys. And one of the things that I would do in the beginning of the school year is I would give a survey out to the students and just to try to get what are things that interest them. Okay, I would do icebreakers in the beginning of the year. I would do different things to just try to see what they want. What are some of the topics that they're interested in? What are some of the things that they'd really like to hear about throughout the year? So I'd give them some of those. And I like the cartoon over here. It says, according to the anonymous online employee survey, you don't trust management. What's up with that? And then it's supposed to be anonymous, right? That's a joke. But the point is that we need to keep these surveys anonymous. So I use SurveyMonkey. I have no idea who's turning it out, and they're really honest with me. And they put all this information, and I get this great feedback from them. And I do the same thing at the end of the year. I do the same thing, but I ask different questions. So I like, how did you improve Islamically? Did you become a better Muslim? Right? Certain things that I really want them to have. Did you, for example, for the sisters, did you start wearing hijab maybe? Do you think you're a little bit more modest? Did you pray more often now? So things like that, and I would ask them those questions at the end of the year. Again, SurveyMonkey, or there's a Rate My Teacher, I think, something like that. So different things like that, and give them anonymous, or let them feel free to share whatever they want. Okay. Role models, or being role models. And as I mentioned this kind of before a little bit, but how many of you guys have heard of PewDiePie? PewDiePie. It's a YouTube channel? One?
It's through my son, though.
Through your son, okay.
17-year-old.
Yeah. Now PewDiePie, if you don't know who he is, he has 11 billion views. Okay? And he has 41 million subscribers. He's number one on YouTube.
The one who did Minecraft.
Yeah, he's a gamer.
Yeah.
He pretty much, this is what he does. Okay? He sits at home all day long. And he's making about $25 million a year. That's long. But he'll play video games and swear the whole time. And our kids, the reason why I'm mentioning this is our kids look up to these people. Our kids want to be gamers. If you ask them, some of them, a lot of them, they actually like visualize them sitting at home, okay, playing video games for a living. So it's very important for us as Muslims and teachers to be role models to these kids. They need it. And for the administrators here, inshallah, those teachers that you see making an effective, or are very effective and making a difference in the school, you need to do whatever you can to keep them in there. You need to, if it's money, you need to pay them more. Okay? You need to do whatever, because they have a huge influence. And I've seen it throughout the years, so many teachers, great teachers, mashallah, making a lot of difference. Because of financial issues or other things, different things happening, they leave the school. Okay? And you have this huge gap that happens. So this is something very important, and keeping in mind some of the role models and things like that. Like just to mention two really quick things. Okay? So personal things that happened. Once I was teaching 3rd grade. This was like about 7-8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. And I was teaching Islamic studies. And the kids, they're younger at the age, so one of the things they were doing is they would constantly call me Baba, okay? And they didn't do it on purpose. They're like, Baba, Abu, teacher, Brother Waseem, okay? And so, but really, and I'm sure, how many of you had that experience? Okay? One time, one of the high school students, she came up to me and she said, Brother Waseem, last night I saw a dream, and I saw the Prophet ﷺ teaching, okay? And anyways, I'll go to the next one. So sorry, excuse me.
And you were in her dream with Prophet Muhammad.
Okay, I'm going to move on, inshallah. Okay, so Biggest Loser. So the Salah edition. So this is a big famous TV show. And so one of the things that we did as a school-wide activity was we were giving this as an activity for, like, rather than losing how many pounds you have, we would tally up how many salah that they missed, okay? And every week, they would be given like we would get an average from the class and try to see, we'd try to see how many students were missing and so on. To keep a long story short, pretty much at the end of the about 10 weeks, we would give like a pizza party and a laser tag party for the people, or for the students that won the competition.
How you can make them honest?
So this was anonymously done, and so we had no idea. It was kind of on the honor system, and we didn't know who's doing what. And so it was based on average. So it's not like just based on how many, the least amount of salah. I have a book I'll share, inshallah. Every one of these things is detailed in the book. So inshallah I'll share that in a few minutes. And the blog has some things as well. Okay, so giving choices to the students. So allow them to have, like, some students, they're really artistic. Okay, so some students love technology. Some, there's different things that they love doing. And so when I was teaching Shama'il, basically the Sirah, Shama'il al-Tirmidhi, and before or afterwards, for the final exam or before the final exam, in order to review, I gave them projects, and I said, I'll give you a choice. I said, either you can make a timeline of the entire seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it would be like an artwork, and so a group of students worked on that. Another group made a prezi, kind of like this one, but covering the shama'il of the Prophet ﷺ. And then another group, they made questions, they made Jeopardy questions and things like that for the students, or for themselves as a study guide. So giving choices and letting them feel like that they're involved in the process of learning, that helps a lot. One thing I didn't mention about I forgot about the Biggest Loser thing. I'm trying to say, like, school-wide competitions, right? So, like, for example, one of the things that we did is we worked with Islamic Relief. And one year we had an orphan drive project, and within I think it was a couple months, we were able to raise about $5,000-6,000 for orphans around the world. Okay, so the students were so happy, and then we were giving them prizes afterwards, things like that. Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit before, but relating the lesson to real life. Okay, like a lot of students will ask, like, why do we need to know this information? So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll organize field trips that go along with the lesson. So for example, I was teaching them fiqh of Salat al-Janaza, okay? Or fiqh of Janaza just in general. One of the things I did is I had one of the experts, you could say, in the community. She had been washing bodies for the past 25 years, okay? So she came into the classroom kind of as an expert, and she showed the students how, like, I could have kept it, okay, this is how you raise your hands, this is what you recite. I did that as a part of the lesson, of course, and I could have just moved on to the next lesson. But we spent a whole week, and she came in, she showed us how to wash she had a pet monkey, pretty much, okay, and she showed us how to wash the body, okay, and then she showed us how to wrap it, things like that, okay, and then we actually prayed janazah on the monkey, okay. So, but then we went to a graveyard. And this was an amazing experience, subhanAllah. So we went to a graveyard, and we had, of course it involves a lot of planning. So the teachers, we all worked together. So not just the Islamic studies and Quran, okay? I worked with the history, I worked with the language arts, math teachers even. And you're like, how? Math? Janazah? What? Okay, so what I did is, the math teacher, I gave them ideas. I was like, okay, listen, the grave, why don't you try to measure the cubic feet of a normal grave? If the body was this long and it was this deep and this and that, so they were doing that. The coffin, the cloth that you're wrapped with, how would it measure up to? Then what we did is, with the history teacher, I talked to them and I was like, okay, why don't you give a brief overview of what are some of the different cultural understandings of death? Okay, and then we talked about that. This was all prep, basically. This was an all-day field trip, and we did this before going. And then I had the English teacher come, and we had them, basically the students all wrote poems about death, and what their eulogy would look like, okay? Or what they would like people to say about them when they die. So we did all of those things, like prep work, you could say. Then we went to the graveyard. Then I spoke, okay? Then I gave a short lecture on basically death. and our purpose in life and things like that. And we went to a historical graveyard, and so one of the things that we did is we had the history teacher give us a tour of, there were some Civil War veterans buried there, and so she went over some of the historical value of the graves over there as well. Then afterwards we went to eat out. Okay? Because sometimes it could be traumatic for them, right? Sometimes first time for them at a graveyard. We took brothers and sisters. So we took them out to eat and we just chilled afterwards. Okay? So this is something that, relating it to real life, inshallah, this will make a huge difference. Another thing that we did is we called it the Mall Modesty Challenge. So the sisters who I don't even know what time it is. I wish there was a clock. Because 11:55 already? SubhanAllah. Yes.
Takes much time.
Yes.
It takes much time from the other parents. How can you apply it?
Well, the way I did it with the history, English, because I involved everyone, it wasn't like they were losing much time to study. Because everyone was involved, it got all the teachers, and of course, you have to work with the administration. It's not like we're doing this every week or every 2 weeks. This is like, at my school, we would do it every 6 weeks. Okay, so we would do it a field trip pretty much somewhere in different ways, and it wasn't just for Islamic studies. Sometimes we would go to, like in Michigan, there's a Greenfield Village. It's a historical museum and so on. So we went there and then we talked about different things like the Islamic perspective on slavery. Okay, while we were there, because there are some different things about slavery there. So you have to kind of keep it connected, and as long as you can show the principle, inshallah. Butter them up a little bit, and to try to tell them that there's a lot of meaningful, and really the thing for us was the feedback we would get from after the field trips or after these things. They were just awesome. Okay, the kids and the parents would come and tell the principal, and then that would just motivate us to do it more often. Yes, sister.
Yeah, and also talking about death and the washing and the graveyard and all this will connect the student, middle school, high school, with their faith and with God
Yes.
more.
Yeah,
It will make them too much.
there were sometimes some sisters would start wearing hijab after this. Okay, some kids actually told me that they stopped listening to music for 2 weeks maybe, but at least it had some effect, right? So, but the point is that relating it to real life, inshallah, will make a difference. Now, I'm running out of time. I have a lot of things to cover, but okay, da'wah. So one of the things, I think it was 2013 when the Charlie Hebdo thing happened in France. The cartoons, not just the attack or whatever, but the cartoons that happened, and then there's this, outrage within the Muslim community, and we flipping over cars and things like that for some reason. So anyway, so what I told the students, I said, okay, we see a problem, okay? We see something major that happened in the society or that's affecting Muslims. I said there's two approaches, right? One approach you can have is, a'udhu billah, the extremist approach. Well, actually, both are extreme. But one approach is the extremist approach. Let's go burn something. Let's go attack something. Let's do this. Let's do that. Whatever. And then on the other hand, you have people, Muslims, who don't care at all that their Prophet ﷺ was, disgraced. Right? They don't care. So I said, what can you do? And these are actually projects. So I took pictures. One of them, this is called the Sirah jar, you could say. Right? Or it was more of the doubt jar. So a group of students, they put this together. They had doubts about the Prophet ﷺ on one side, and they had the answer to the doubt from the Sirah and the Hadith on the back side. And they would just pick it. We did it in the class, and then they took it to the library, the local library, and they actually set up a table for them over there. This was in Michigan. The next one was basically origami. Okay, so some students, they put the Hadith and the stories from the Sirah about the Prophet ﷺ in origami into these shapes, and they passed it out in front of the library, the local library. Another group of people, students, how many of you guys have seen the project where they had the rose and they tied the Hadith to it? Okay, I think they did it in Europe. A lot of you might have heard of that. So what these kids did is they had candy bars. And they wrapped it with these hadith and sirah, things from the tidbits from the sirah, or ayat from the Quran, and then they passed it out around in the library or a different place to make sure that inshallah that they know the truth about Islam. Okay, so what interests students? Again, I'm running out of time. Okay. Inshallah, I'll try to wrap up by 12:10, so you could have 5 minutes, inshallah, for Q&A. But music versus nasheed analysis. So again, whatever they're really interested in, to try to get them to, you're talking about it in class. So now some of you might not agree with this, okay? But one of the things that we have to realize is these students are listening to music, whether we like it or not. So one thing that I did is I had them bring their favorite songs, the lyrics for their favorite songs, okay? And I had them bring their favorite nasheed or something like this, right? And they brought, papers into the classroom. And then I would allow them, as long as it's clean, okay, a clean version of it, you could say, I would allow them to play 1 minute of their song, okay? And then we would look over the lyrics, and we would actually have like a T-chart on the board. And I would just write like a compare and contrast. What is the song, what are these songs talking about? And what is the nasheed or the Quran or whatever you could say is talking about? And these kids, they came up to me afterwards and they're like, SubhanAllah, we never realized what we're listening to. We didn't realize what we're listening to. And so this is something that, if inshallah we can try to do things like this, spoken word rap competitions. So in our history as Muslims, alhamdulillah, we have this rich history of scholars when they would, you could say, summarize a whole, science, you could say, in a poem, okay? And so what I did is at the end of the year, to review, I had them do these spoken word rap competitions, okay? And so they would have to take a chapter, summarize it into like a 2 to 3 minute rap, and then they reviewed for the final exam with that. Okay? So just keeping it interesting, keeping it live. I'm not going to go through all of these, we don't have time. But just one thing about the stand your ground, this was really cool too. So I would go into the musalla or in a bigger area, and I would get my students, I would have 4 corners pretty much. So I'd have like, I strongly agree, I agree, I'm like, I disagree, or I'm, kind of in the middle or something like that. And we'd be in the middle, and I would ask like a hot topic debate. Like, could Muslims date before marriage? Okay? Now these are high school students, and then again, you have to make it like really friendly in the classroom where they're, not all of them go into like, of course not, brother, it's haram. No, of course not, I'm not going to do that. But they're doing that on the side. So I made it in a way that they would be willing to kind of voice their opinion. Okay? So they took different positions, and then we had a 45-minute debate about this issue. Okay, in the class. So then I actually, in another session, I did a debate about dhabiha and non-dhabiha. That's a hot topic, right? Moon sighting or moon fighting, right? So we have all these different things, and they would rather, of course, talk to themselves in an intellectual way than listen to me lecture, okay? So you provide discussion questions. I have some on elmscape.net. On the website, it gives you actually discussion questions for different topics that you can use in your classroom, inshallah, one by one. Okay. Okay. So apples versus donuts. So now, if you, for example, had a table and you had apples and donuts, what would most people take? Donuts. Okay. The donuts would be gone. We'd need, new Krispy Kreme or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever over and over again. But the apples would be just sitting there fresh, right? Or stale maybe. But anyway, so the point is, if we give them dry lectures, okay? And we have the Shaykh style attitude sometimes, kind of behind the desk, I'm sitting over here, and I'm just going to give a lecture on Quran and Hadith, Quran and Hadith, Quran and Hadith. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Quran and Hadith, a'udhu billah, right? But we need to spice it up a little bit. Okay, we need to kind of throw an activity in there to get them talking about the Quran and Hadith. Not just me talking about it, not me being excited about it, they need to be excited about it. So anyways, they're called apple fritters, right? The donuts have a little bit of apple in there. So you have, for example, a basketball tournament, okay? And you have like a 5-minute halaqah after prayer. Simple as that. Give them a small reminder. Abu's Tabu, this is actually... So, how many of you guys have heard of taboo? Played taboo, maybe? A lot of you? Okay, so my dad, he calls it taboo. He didn't know, right? So he called it tabu, he's desi. Anyway, so he goes, so I just called it Abu's tabu. So what I did is I made an Islamic version of this game, okay? So I put together about 20 or 30 different cards, for taboo, you could say. And I used that and we played that in class. I did it at a Mina conference one time, different places. So kids are learning from this and playing charades, icebreakers, things like that. So Ilmscape, that's actually the website, so ilmscape.net. There's a lot of resources on the blog especially for teachers, inshallah. You can find a lot of things over there. You can sign up for the newsletter. A couple of times every month I try to send something, inshallah, informative out to the community, inshallah. Okay. Service to the community. I'm not going to talk about this because the sister talked about it really well in the previous thing. But again, linking things. Like if you're talking about fiqh of zakah or sadaqah or something like that, what I would do is simply take them to like a homeless shelter, or we would pack lunches, in the classroom or, within the school. And once a year, right, we would go out and try to service or help the community. I would suggest for administrators to make it mandatory, if you haven't already, for middle and high school students to have at least 100 community service hours every year. Okay? To make it mandatory, not every year, sorry. For the 4-year program, for example, the high school program. So 100 hours. So that they're always part of this community, and not just Muslim organizations, but really anyone in the Muslim community. Give them an ear. This is kind of like what the survey, really, but listening to them, okay? Letting them tell you what they want to talk about, and then using some of those sessions. I'm not saying change your curriculum, just totally because of what they said, but like those tarbiyah sessions I mentioned, once a week, once every 2 weeks, so on, has something, a part of this, in there, so that it keeps them interested. Oh yeah, I gave that suggestion in the beginning of the year. Brother Waseem's actually using it. So using things like that. Okay. So these, ain't nobody got time for that, right? So nobody has time to do this. As educators, we're already busy. Like the sister before me, she was talking about how like his teachers are burned out and all these different things going on. So what I try to do, again, I used to complain a lot, honestly, right? And maybe I still do to my wife and things like that. But anyway, so I think we need to, as Muslims, come up with solutions. So what I did is, at least this is something I put together. So it's called the Big Book of Islamic Lessons. This, like all the activities I've mentioned so far, they're detailed one by one in this book. Okay? Big Book of Islamic Lessons. It breaks it down. The field trips to the graveyard. One thing we call it hike to the hereafter. We would take them on a weekend trip, and we would do different things about the hereafter and walk them through step by step and do activities. It's in the book. The mall modesty challenge, I don't have time to explain what that is, but we would take sisters to the mall and they would do activities. They would find the most modest dress and they would basically put it together and in ensemble, and they would have a fashion show within the sisters afterwards and things like that. The Big Book of Quranic Lessons, what is that? So as a Quran teacher, one of the things that I hated doing was trying to go to 15 different sources to gather information to teach my students, right? So we're already busy, right? You're trying to go to Ibn Kathir, then like, okay, it's too high level for these kids, for high school kids, many of them, right? You go to, different tafasir that are out there, and you're getting confused, and you're not only, sometimes confused yourself, but then you're trying to impart it to the students, and they're lost as well, right? So what I did is I try to gather some of the basic tafasir, things that are kind of relevant to them. And I just did with Surah Al-Qasas. Inshallah, make dua for me, inshallah, tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dream, inshallah, is to do this with more parts of the Quran. Maybe if I can, the entire Quran. But to make the Quran into a textbook. Because we don't go to the Quran anymore as Muslims, really, unfortunately. We don't go to the Quran for as a book of guidance. We have aqidah, seerah, fiqh, and all these different topics, but the book that is most dear to us, we rarely go to that itself for guidance. So the point of Surah Al-Qasas, because it was the story of Musa alayhi salam, I try to put that together, and it has basically the ayah, it has word by word translation, the ayah by ayah, it has a short explanation, it has discussion questions, activities, and it has a quiz at the end of each lesson. So it has like something, a cookbook pretty much for every teacher. It's like right there, you open it up, okay, I know what to do now. Right? Inshallah.
So this is
On ilmscape.net. It's on Amazon and ilmscape.net. discussion. So what we could do, we have 10 minutes. I'll give you the choice. Remember I talked about giving choices? So you have the choice. We could basically have a Q&A, and you could kind of ask me about some of the things that I talked